We begin with Kirk on a diplomatic mission, and a sign that we are already on the right foot, as this is no longer the insufferable, incompetent dude bro that we've had for the past two films. Rather, it's someone who is capable, someone who can be highly adaptive, sure, but not an impulsive pair of testicles wearing a uniform. Someone who can hopefully bring peace to the conflict between these people and the aliens who have asked the Federation to appear as a neutral third party. To be the go-between that will ensure that among Starfleet's missions must always be reaching out with the hand of friendship.
That was quick!
Even if it may get dog slobber all over it. They didn't seem interested in accepting the gift offered, a piece of an ancient weapon. In the other alien society, offering a weapon is a sign that you want peace, but you can see how well that went. This scene sets things off on the right track, though, by showing that Kirk can be put into comedic situations without needing to show him as a horny gorilla. Despite how badly this went, this is already a Kirk that I could believe was a captain, while the previous one I could not believe was a McDonald's shift manager. We learned from Kirk's log entry that they got that 5-year mission he was hoping for, and they're over halfway through it, with mixed results.
And some for the worse.
I don't know who Gamora is, but you've said her name during sex 5 times now, Larry. Kirk's log entry reflects a bit of ennui in the face of what they've, faced. The question he's reflecting upon is whether or not they've taken on a task ultimately pointless. And he reflects on that with Bones as they settle in for a drink in celebration of his birthday. Early, since it's kind of a bummer his dad died that day. Though I have to admit, deliveries can be pretty difficult. If my wife had had a gun that day, my kids would also be celebrating their birthday as the day their father died.
A year older than he ever got to be. He joined Starfleet because he believed in it. I joined on a dare.
You joined to see if you could live up to him.
Took a while to get there, I'd say. Unless his every thought was, what would my dad do? Oh yeah, he'd tap that ass. It might seem, oh yeah, you only like Kirk when he's dull and moody. But what I like about this Kirk is that he's reflective. He's thinking about matters that are larger than himself. Whereas he used to categorize things other than himself as salute it, fight it, or fuck it, and then call it a day. The Enterprise has arrived for resupply at Yorktown, an advanced new kind of starbase, and everyone but Bones appreciates it, since it could be considered dangerous. I mean, I admit it does kind of look that way to me, but damn, it looks good. I would just never go anywhere without a spacesuit, though. I don't care how many redundancies there are. All it takes is one kid with a handful of pennies dropped into a vent, and I'm sure that whole thing is just going to shut down. I know how it works. Oh, I loved him in Toy Story. So the Enterprise docks, and there's trouble in paradise already. Seems that Uhura and Spock have broken up. But at least we won't have to listen to them hash out their relationship problems in the middle of a deadly mission. That's a plus. And Sulu gets a chance to meet up with his daughter, and what Word of God says is his boyfriend, but context says this could just be his brother who's been watching her. You can't be sure. But if you're LGBT, just take comfort in knowing that this is more than what you got over 7 combined years of TNG. Besides, the real thing to be sad about is the news that Spock receives from the Vulcans who are waiting for him on the station. The news that Ambassador Spock has passed away. This was done to reflect the death of Leonard Nimoy back in 2015. Which, I admit, hit me particularly hard as well. I was moved to throw together a video to remember the way that he touched me. One that has received a lot of tips that will be very helpful in the specific situation of Leonard Nimoy ever dying a second time, so thank you, YouTube. But I do wish that I had the chance to tell him how much he affected me and so many others. I suspect he probably knew. Still, I would like the chance to just say to him, you know, your life was important. In fact, the day that you passed away, it was the second most reported news story the entire day. I could imagine his response, probably just a simple thank you. He may be curious, though, and ask, just what was the top story anyway? Was it an international crisis, a natural disaster, some important political development? And I'd have to say, no, we were talking about this dress. The day of my death, it was more important to talk about this blue and black dress. What are you talking about, Spock? This is white and gold. Well, there's a problem in Yorktown Control. Some alien ship is approaching with an unknown species on board, but clearly desperate. They bring her over, get the universal translator going, and she mentions that her ship ran into serious trouble in a nebula and then crashed. She's hoping that Starfleet could send a ship in to traverse the nebula and rescue them, and the Enterprise is the best ship equipped to do that.
Captain, Starfleet Command sent me your application for the Vice Admiral position here at this installation.
You know that Vice Admiral doesn't mean you're in charge of Vice on the station, right? Yes, of course I knew that. This decision, though, is why you can see that Kirk is a grown and matured individual. Because if he was unhappy, he didn't have to ask to be promoted to a desk job. He could just resign his commission and go home. Staying in Starfleet would be keeping responsibility, and headaches, and tedium. That's not something an impetuous individual would want. That's someone who believes there's still nobility and importance in what is being done, just a feeling that he can't do it from the front anymore. But first, the nebula. The Enterprise heads out, although this nebula has an asteroid field inside, like the center of a Tootsie Pop, only not as much fun. After Kirk gives the crew a little pep talk, they finally arrive at the planet where the ship crashed, but it seems that wasn't the only ship in the neighborhood. In fact, this isn't one ship they're picking up, it's hundreds, maybe thousands, so shooting them is a bit difficult, like using a shotgun on a swarm of bees. Oof, that was like a flock of seagulls right through a jet engine. Even Sully isn't going to be landing this thing safely. They try to warp out of there, but that is a bit of a problem when the nacelles have been sheared off. You should really redesign this ship with a bug zapper. To make matters worse, which is impressive when a significant part of the ship is missing, boarders arrive, presumably to take whatever's left of value, like the copper wiring and the seat covers. That is one hell of an area of attack. You really gotta nerf that one in the next patch. So the way is now clear for the big cheese himself to show up, Crawl. Watchtower! Well, they have come all this way and gone to all this trouble, and what they're doing is taking the object that Kirk had tried to give to the dog people. I guess it's important to somebody. Probably could have just asked instead of killing everybody. They'd probably just hand it over. It's also a weird attack because Bones finds at least one victim looking all messed up, like he's been suddenly aged or jerkied. And speaking of messed up, Kirk has asked Scotty to do something with whatever small amount of engineering is still plugged into something working. So he switches it on and winds up getting them moving, but it's a bit hard to tell which end is up now. Are you supposed to walk on the floor or on the walls? Then again, this is how Bones feels at the end of a particularly long and uneventful shift. Well, Crawl isn't going to stand for that, so he just keeps smashing more and more of his ships into the shaft below the saucer, bust enough pieces off it, and eventually the ship's got to break. Even Scotty needs something in order to make the ship go. So Kirk is forced to order them to abandon ship, although at this point, only the most optimistic person in the world would say the Enterprise still qualifies.
We gotta get you guys from the escape pod. Go! Go! So,
I need your help.
I've got a box full of green shirts in my quarters. I've been waiting for them for 3 years, and I'll be damned if I'm waiting another 3. During the fun, Bones and Spock wound up riding the turbolift into space, only to get rescued by one of the alien ships, where they fought their way into control of it, because if there's one thing you can be sure will happen if Spock and McCoy are together, it's fighting. From there, they can see the aliens are taking the crew, and probably not for their own good. People who shoot you with aging guns don't have your best interest at heart. They're not the only ones separated either. Uhura sees Crawl beating the crap out of Kirk, and saves him by separating the sections, even though it means that she's stuck with the bad guy now. Probably saved his life considering that the case with the artifact is empty, and so far, we've only seen Crawl when he's at work. He's never gotten downright peeved before, and we do not want that. It's like when Gustavo Fring stops carrying a broom and dustpan and picks up a box cutter. We've gone from shrewd to angry now. At this point, Chekhov announces that they're stuck in the gravitational field of the planet, meaning that what's left of this ship is going to hit it. Funny when smashing into a planet doesn't break your top 5 list of worst things that happened to you today.